People don't really seem to understand Deep Rock Galactic Rogue Core. A lot of people want to remove key features from the game that make it a roguelike. We're going to talk about the big three here today that they posted on their Steam discussion page. Now, the first of those big three was the timer. Some people want this completely removed from the game, while most people want it tweaked. And I think that some people is a loud minority of the population. Now, removing this timer would be a really bad thing for the game because it's kind of key to its pacing. Removing it would mean that every player would have unlimited time in the caves for the most part, excluding the fact that they would be using ammunition throughout fighting these waves, but they wouldn't have a hard set timer. Now, what this would mean would be that players would just full clear every cave and they wouldn't have any care about it. And that would be pretty boring and it would also ruin the pacing, like I said earlier. Um, but I will admit that the timer could use one small change, and that is that it could be segmented to increase difficulty every now and then. Now, currently there is one segment in it, and it shifts around depending on what level you're on. But I think it could use a couple more, or it could just increase the difficulty as the timer goes up smoothly. I think that would work quite well, and it would definitely help with the pacing. Now, the other issue that I've heard a lot of people really complain about, this is probably the main one, is the shared upgrade system. Now, I understand complaints about the shared upgrade system, but I think it's a unique and really interesting. But that doesn't necessarily make it good. But I do still like it. I think that rerolls will alleviate most of the problems that players actually have with this issue, unless they don't allow players to re-roll after players have already chosen. If they make it so that players can pick and then the next player could potentially re-roll, then it could alleviate those frustrations really well. But I think it's really good for teamwork, which is the complete opposite of what some people are saying. Some people are saying it would lead to toxicity, but I think it's really good for cooperation because it makes you really conscious of what your teammates' builds are when you're seeing directly what they're picking and you're conversing with them about what to pick and what not to pick. However, I do recognize that some of the really good legendary upgrades might get grabbed up by the first person, but I do think it is fair with the rotating system they have for priority, how it shifts over every single time you get an upgrade. Um, but I think it leads to greater cooperation in general because you're seeing what your teammates' builds are, and you see perks in there, and you read through them all individually as people, and then you would be able to be like, hey, I think this perk really works well for your build, and they could say, oh, this one works well for your build, or you could just decide that for yourself. But I think having that back and forth is helpful to this communication and cooperation. The other issue brought up in the big three is the ammo economy. I think this is the only one that might actually need fixing, while the other two I think are basically fine how they are. Um, I do think that ammo economy could just be kind of a skill issue on a lot of players' parts, including mine. I've recently started using the pickaxe a lot in my runs to deal with smaller enemies. But doing a simple change, such as just buffing the all-around ammo capacity for every weapon, not the magazine size, but the stored ammo capacity, would be a good change, even if it's just a slight amount. They could also go another route and make it so your restock percent goes up from 50% to maybe 60%, but then they would maybe have to tweak the meta progression upgrades to be slightly lower, and I think that would be a little weird, but they could go that route. But I think a more interesting solution, which is very specific and doesn't affect all classes, but I do think it is interesting, is that they should give the spotter's ammo ability multiple charges so you can throw them down, or make it so multiple teammates can refill at one ammo box. Now, there are some other issues I've heard people talking about, but I think these are a lot less important. But some of them are more frustrating to me than most of the big three. The main one I've heard is that people complain about everyone needing to be near Ellis for an upgrade. I think this could be changed to just one person, but I do think that would discourage people from sticking together as much as they are encouraged to do right now. And I think that's a good thing that the people stick together. So I think maybe making it half the team has to stick in the zone to get the upgrade and the other half the team can be out doing whatever could be a good way to do it. But that leaves the issue of canonically the dwarves are no longer grabbing these upgrades from Ellis. And I think what they could do is a neat little thing from Deep Rock Galactic, the original game with the little swarming drones. They could have the upgrade kind of fly out of Ellis and fly directly to the dwarf that picked it. Of course, they would just be little drones of those like blue or green things that come off of Ellis that you see when he's prepared for an upgrade. Could be something like that. But the visual isn't as big of an issue as the gameplay element right now because it is early access. And another thing I see a lot of people saying is that a lot of the upgrades are just permanent, or not permanent, are just small, simple stat increases. But that's just simply not true. I went and looked at the Wikipedia page, and most of them are actually interesting upgrades. Sure, there's not a lot of them right now, but they're going to add more. But if you actually look at it, the only ones that are simple upgrades are like the ammo, the armor, and the health. Those are basically the only ones, I could have missed some, that are just flat upgrades with no conditions to them. Some of them are less interesting than others with their conditions, such as the one that's just more pickaxe damage to stunned enemies, I think. That one's not as interesting, but this still does have the condition of the enemy required to be stunned, so it leads to an interesting build if you go to build that. But let's keep in mind that this game isn't early access, but I fully support the fact that I don't think they should remove the timer. And I don't think they should remove shared upgrades either. And I really don't think people understand what makes this game unique and different from Deep Rock Galactic, because it's not Deep Rock Galactic 2. If you're interested in anything I've had to say so far, I do stream over on Twitch and here on YouTube, so feel free to tune in to any of those. I mainly stream on Fridays and Saturdays, but sometimes I'll sprinkle a stream here and there throughout the week later at night. Anyway, thanks for watching.